Welcome everyone to the Fargo Parking Commission, and we're in the new City Commission chambers, and it's pretty amazing up here. It feels pretty formal, but it's very professional, so whoever designed it did a nice job. So we're honored to be up here. The first item on the agenda is to approve the order of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item is the meeting minutes from December 20th. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion. Motion for approval.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Vanessa, you're going to be the first one up with the interstate financial data. And
I feel like this is so high. Good morning. Revenue in January was up 1.56. New rates went into effect. Transient revenue was also increased 11.3% in January from December. Citations were down 60%, and that was due to we had vehicles, both our vehicles were down at one point. The passport transition, the weather, and service permits increased. We sold, 10 more from December, and residential went down 17 from 24. But overall, they were up 3. We sold 3 more than we did in December.
so Vanessa, how's the snow removal been going for us in the parking lot's got to be tough.
It's been interesting.
Yeah. Do we have a lot of stragglers overnight, or not, isn't it too bad? Are there some lots that are worse than others?
It hasn't been too bad in the surface lots. It's the ramps that we find challenging.
Oh, okay.
Just because we can't get the big equipment up in those, some of those upper decks. So, and we want to keep the snow piles at 3 and under, 3 feet and under. So that's been a little bit of a challenge.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, Jim?
Vanessa, one of the things I noticed in the report you sent me on the Roberts ramp was that I think our overnight parking was like well over 250, and I wonder if people are just kind of getting into that ramp overnight so that the streets can get cleaned, which that was a real positive thing to have that facility there, to have maybe 250 people parked overnight. We know there's not that many people living in there, but it's nice to see it get used overnight and to get the streets cleared.
We want to promote that?
We might. I think probably our Public Works Department would appreciate that, to let people know to park there overnight on these restricted times. That would certainly help out if people would kind of get off the street overnight and let the street cleaning crews get in. I guess the other thing I noticed on the report is kind of real positive was the Roberts Commons transient revenue, that kind of hourly parking revenue was $10,800 in January, and so I was a little concerned it might drop off early when it's colder, but that's revenue is higher than we expected, and shows there's that demand for short-term parking in downtown, and which is really surprising given the fact that the first 2 hours are free and it's free in evenings and weekends. To still get this kind of revenue is a real positive.
I think it really has been helpful. I know that a lot of people aren't used to using ramps or haven't been, and when they get a taste of the Roberts ramp, they like it, and they are willing to pay a little bit for the convenience.
Especially when it snows and you're not brushing off your car.
Exactly. Does anybody else have questions for Vanessa? Otherwise, we'll move to the next item. Do you have anything else, Vanessa?
That is all for the financial report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We'll have Jim, do you want to talk about the Mercantile parking garage update?
Yeah, we've had kind of 2 groups. Actually, only the committees met that looked at the overall design, and so there's a couple things I wanted to go through with you today, and it's information we're just receiving now. I actually got this morning. I think the next steps, if we're comfortable in this process at some point, I think relatively soon, we need to go to the City Commission and ask for authorization to have our city attorney work with Kilbourne on a development agreement. Secondly is to get people comfortable with the overall design. There'd be a few tweaks, but we'll see today. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And then third is to put together a finance plan, and we've had some discussions with Gate City. They're interested in trying to help us because they need parking downtown, try to put together financing. And I haven't talked in detail with our finance department, but I'll do that also. So what I'll have probably first is have Keith go over the overall design. I don't know if we can get this up on the screen to show what it's going to look like. I think this is our third version that we've tried, and I think this one gets to but a design that I think is as cost effective as we can get it, and we'll meet some of those needs. And so I'll let him go through the design and what's proposed here. So Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. So I'm Keith Lear with the Kilbourne Group and helping lead this project at the Mercantile site. So we're excited to be able to continue to work on this project, both internally and with the city of Fargo. We feel like there's a great opportunity for our city here in this project, and it could be another key project in the continued improvement and development of our downtown. So again, thank you for having me. So the Mercantile project, just to kind of summarize again where it's at, this is located at the corner of 4th Avenue North and Broadway. So the current structure there against Broadway would be the old Goodyear building up against the Broadway section. And then the back lot we call our Warner lot right now, but it's currently a surface level parking lot. But those two spaces together we call the Mercantile project. So as we're looking at this project, again, it's a mixed-use project, or the concept for this design is a mixed-use project. This is looking at it much in the same flavor as the Roco ramp. So the idea is that we have a parking ramp in here, and we have it screened, or big portions of this ramp screened with mixed-use development around it. Just in concept, we have a kind of the things that are going on around in this site. So working our way from Broadway, ground floor, this would be really the phase 2 of the project. We would talk about this project in 2 phases. Phase 1 being the garage area, phase 2 being the wrap portion, or the rest of the mixed use development. The mixed use development would go up against Broadway and wrap the corner on 4th Avenue, continuing on 4th Avenue. But then the greater part of the ramp would land in what is now the Warner lot, but on the east side of this site. So the ramp currently right now, we have kind of 2 concepts going with parking. One is a kind of at grade level, quick access, call it it's kind of the direct replacement of the on-street parking. So it's meant to be 90 minutes, 2 hours, kind of high turnover traffic. That location, or the entrance for that, would be at the north end here. You would come in here, you would have parking on this portion of the ramp. On the south portion of the ramp, or the south portion of the structure, would be the beginning of our what we would call kind of more of our traditional parking ramp. So we would come in, and it would begin to ramp up at that portion, and then spiral up in the project. I have a couple other views of this, just to get an idea of the massing. So this would be from the northwest corner, looking back at the project. And so again, you can see in the blue, this mixed-use project, we're expecting retail on the main floor, and then apartments over top. We're currently showing an option with some sort of a townhome or row home option on the north side of the ramp. That's doing a couple things. One, it's helping with that screening element, but then it's also kind of tearing down the structures and the developments, so it makes it a little bit more kind of scale and approachable for the groups that are on the north side of the building. This would be from the Broadway and 4th Avenue intersection. Looking back, again, the concept is that we're hiding this ramp. We don't want that to necessarily be the showcase of this. We want to feature the rest of the activity that's going on around the project, but then have this great piece of functional utility for the downtown behind it. This is coming back to the intersection of 5th Street and 4th Avenue North, so looking at the axes of the project. And then here kind of more of a street view looking at this. So I would put one kind of a note to this. This is shown as a 7-floor ramp. That's a little bit of a mistake. It's actually 6.5 floors. So what we've done is we're looking at the design as both. We're looking at the efficiency of the circulation of the space, but we're also looking at the overall height of it and at how that fits in proportion to the rest of the buildings that are around that site. at 6.5 stories. So the actual top of the ramp would be in this general location. We're at about 50 feet above ground. We accomplished that by taking the ramp and lowering it into the ground a little bit. So this on-grade parking, it's more, technically kind of a garden level parking where it's about 4 feet. You would ramp down about 4 feet so we can help with some of the height going on there. The total height at the top of what we would call the 6.5 story, or the kind of the beginning of 7th story, is somewhere around that 56 to 58 feet for the project. With this efficiency, it's a pretty efficient ramp. So we're estimated at 372 parking spots right now. We need to work through some of from the ADA clearances, some of the mechanical room clearances and something like that, but it feels like we should be kind of north of that 350 range as we continue to work through this process. And then again, somewhere around that 35 parking stalls on the quick access area, that would be that kind of quick hitters, in and out parking on the ground floor. Like I mentioned before, 6.5 stories. So north elevation around 50 feet, south elevation around 56 feet. So that's very much, it's larger than the rest of the projects, but when you go directly across the street to 4th Avenue or directly across the street to the buildings that are on the other side of Broadway, it's very much in scale with those, and it'd be very much in scale with the type of structure we'd like to do with the mixed-use wrap portion of phase 2 of this project. It's about 145,000 square feet total, with an estimated efficiency that's around 385 square feet per spot. As a reference, Roberts Commons or Roco ramp is about 380 square feet per spot. So we're very much in line with the efficiency of that project. And then also, I don't have noted on here, but the Block 9 project is also around that 385, 390 standpoint. So we're doing a pretty good job of being efficient with this space. So as we start looking ahead from our standpoint, and we're starting to target project schedules, there's kind of 2 parallel paths that would happen here. We would have the design and construction and development side that's on our side, but then also the development and the city work on the other side. So from the design and construction milestone standpoint, we have RFPs in place, or we have responses to RFPs in place for all our design teams for the entire project. We would like to get that kicked off in March. That allows us to get to 100% DD level, which is the level of design we need to officially go in and do a GMP estimate with a contractor. Because of the simplicity of this ramp, or because of the simplicity of ramps in general, we feel like that level of detail should be sufficient to be able to get to a 100% GMP. We would wrap up the design sometime kind of midsummer, start buying the project out in maybe late July into August, with the goal that we want to start in August, maybe up to early September. I should mention this at least the initial design and construction as we're looking at this is a precast ramp. And the driver for, much like concrete or placing concrete, is we want to try and get ahead of winter conditions as much as possible. But especially with precast, is the sequencing as we start looking at this, the precast delivery has the chance to start moving into the spring road constrictions or road restrictions. That would be the following spring after the start. So we want to be cognizant of trying to target that kind of late August, early September with the construction start to make sure that times out. On the development side, and again, this is talking to Jim and kind of the next steps, but obviously here at the Parking Commission today, we would need to get started on some of the legal agreements that go associated with this. There'll be some land plotting and some other things like that we'll need to deal with. Ultimately, trying to get to a project closing and a construction start in August and then early September, so those all align.
So any questions for Keith? Randy?
Sure. How many apartments are you going to have?
Total unit mix is not confirmed yet, but we're thinking it's probably a 5/1 structure, which means 5 levels of apartments above the top of it. We're somewhere probably in that 100 range, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And so we're going to displace some parking if you start in August, correct?
Right.
And how is that going to affect the downtown area, with that August, September start time? And then my second part of that question is, how many parking spots do we gain overall, once the project is developed?
Well, and go ahead, Jim, but it's, right now it's private and, so it's turning into the public parking, but go ahead, Jim.
believe there's 80 surface spots on that Warner property, and then there's some additional people that are parking on that River Market property. They're all, taken. I think there's a few that Kilbourne's holding back for other uses. So, as I kind of looked at the overall, parking demand, in the downtown, interest from, Warner's building, the Radisson, Gate City, some of the Kilbourne projects, I come up with over 450 spots where people are interested in, anywhere up to 600 on the growth. So I think it'd be nice to put more on this, but I think with the height, I think we need to stay at the 372. As far as where can these people, be displaced, if we start in August, the Block 9 parking garage, we expect that to be open in September, but RDO really won't be into it until later. The other factor that we have in September sometime is the police department will be relocating out by Central Garage, the former Board of States building. There are 40 surface spots on that parcel, and across the street in the former health building, there are 40 spots. So I think some of these people can be shuffled over to either the surface parking or possibly get into the Block 9 ramp. Now, I don't know how long this will take, to complete, so that'll be, as RDO moves into the building and that starts to fill up, there might be some limited spots there. Their ramp is going to have 370 spots. I think their construction workers will park in there as they finish the building. That's probably 150 to 200. So there will be some capacity there. So, but it's going to involve some, moving around. But we have some short-term opportunities in using the police and city parcels, as well as potentially the Block 9 garage, while we construct this one. So I think there's a window here where we can get something up and not impact the downtown too negatively.
Will it be the same situation as, with this project? So the ramp, as in Roberts Commons, the ramp was built first and then the residential came. So I imagine the same situation will be here where the parking will be available before that increased demand from the residential comes on. Is that right, Keith?
Correct, yeah, I didn't touch on in detail on the construction schedule, but the goal would be that this ramp is about a 10 to 12 month build as a precast ramp, but we would start that project, get that well ahead of the rest of the project. Phase 1 would continue, then phase 2 would probably start spring of 2020, but absolutely, we would permit it separate as a separate project. We'd have a separate CO for the ramp, so that when the ramp structure is complete and it's CO'd, then we would be able to turn it over as soon as possible after that, and not contingent on the rest of the project completing.
Right, and I want to thank the Kilbourne Group for having us, some of the parking commission, get to weigh in, and also some of the neighbors. Tom Smith from Great Northern Bicycles was at the meeting, and was able to share some of his ideas, which were really good ideas, I think, and they ended up incorporating some of them into this plan as far as like that. Instead, like right now, a lot of the public parking, people have to go up to the 7th level on the Roberts ramp, where on-grade public parking at a little bit lower level really helps to lower the overall height and increases the access for those hourly parkers. So I think that people that are coming in from to do some shopping are going to really appreciate that grade level hourly parking. So I want to thank you for being responsive to those ideas that some of us presented. As far as on the east side, we're going to have further development on 4th Avenue as a signature corridor, kind of another gateway to the river. So, it's hard to show in these renderings, at least, what that facade will look like on that east side. But I think it's an opportunity to, see if we can do something interesting architecturally, so it's not just, and again, this is early renderings. I think the concepts are really, really good. Do you see in the alleyway, there's another, Tom Smith had brought this up about kind of a grotto opportunity. Randy, when we were in Lincoln before, when we were scoping out their ramps, we saw one just like that, and this looks like another opportunity for that. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. So this through, we've had several discussions with Tom and with many of the people here about that. But yeah, the idea would be that again, we would be looking at potentially vacating. There's a public alley that works through this space right now, but then shifting that to more of just a private service alley and pedestrian kind of corridor through there. So we would probably slim this down to 14 feet wide instead of 20 or 22 feet wide, enough to get garbage trucks and some of those types of things through there. We put the proper easements in place to be able to service the northern building, which is in the northwest corner, to make sure that's happening. But yeah, absolutely. There's, we would, on second floor, the idea is we would build over the top of this. And so you would have that true kind of portal into this space. And then on the north side, at least in concept right now, we'd have something similar. We would sit a stair tower out in this area and then have a same kind of similar portal on that side as well. But then this area from phase 2 would be meant to be much of an amenity space for the people that are in that wrap. So some kind of a grilling patio, common space for that area. That would be the goal.
And so the owners of the building to the north and west, they've also been in the communication loop.
Yes.
So what's their response? Have you shown them these?
Yes, we have. So we're excited. They're excited to see the project going. As we continue to develop, we'll move more details through there. But one of the things we talked about with them, and we're continuing to talk about with them, is the idea of this ramp having some impact on what is their current property on this corner. But the idea of the stair tower living in the northwest corner, that it makes a great, it's a great access for potential people that are utilizing his space and renting in the ramp. But then also too, having this connection and having the ability to funnel people to the north of this space, it really helps open up kind of the north of 4th Avenue district of downtown. And just, it's a great connectivity with some of the development that's happening up there. It just allows for a great pedestrian corridor to connect this ramp in that direction. So yeah.
And then have you used MBN engineering for the electrical work in the Roberts ramp, and they're still helping us with some of our projects there to make that energy friendly for EV charging and batteries being future ready, basically. And so have you been working with Mike Berger on anything for this ramp to make sure that we're being future ready, just with conduit and access and things like that? For by 2025, more than half of the cars are going to be electric. It's going to be there. So
Right.
we need to be ready for that. What's your plans on that?
Yeah, we absolutely would be looking at opportunities to do that. To date, we've had some general discussions about it, but haven't done a lot of detailed planning around it.
Right, but that is the consideration. So Mike Almendinger was with us when we went to Norway, and you saw firsthand how things are going to be. And it just seems if we're proactive, I know it's a lot less expensive to put it in the front end as far as access and runs than it is to retrofit.
Right. Yep. And absolutely. So we would plan it on the front end, and then even the idea of the solar roof or something like that. Those are things we'd have a great location to be able to utilize those types of amenities for this space, and future-proof this space. So absolutely, be looking at those.
Did anybody else have questions for Keith?
Just one other comment, as we look at Fifth Street, there's no underground utilities in there, and engineering had mentioned to me that they'd be open to, vacating all or a portion of that street. So maybe this, maybe the south part of that ramp could even be moved a little bit more into that right away, if that would help with the, efficiency of the ramp and get a few more spaces. So just something to consider there.
So are you saying that 4th Avenue, the street itself would be narrowed, or?
No, Fifth Street.
Oh, 5th Street, I see, okay, yeah.
If you go back to the aerial photo with there's a lot of diagonal parking there, but with our entrances there, that parking wouldn't be available anymore, or perhaps that could be and you've got another parking lot across the street, so there's not much, street parking in the area. So I guess I passed out the cost estimate. Randy, I don't know if you got one, and this would be I think the model would be similar to what we did with Roco, where it would be a public-private partnership, and we would contract with Kilbourne to build the facility since they own the land right now. And then we would be the owner at the end. There'd probably be some sort of condominium type agreement, perhaps if there's going to be a common stair tower and elevator. As you can see, the construction cost is going to be about 11 million. That does not include the cost of acquisition of the land, and so we'll need to have some more detailed discussions with on the land cost. The construction cost per parking stall is just under 30,000 per parking stall. That's again with the cast and or the precast. If we go to cast in place, that will be higher. We could that could be up to 1.6 million more. I don't think we don't need to make that decision today. One of the things that would be helpful for us is we have Walker Consultants is actually it's different than Walker Parking. They've been working with this on the Block 9 ramp, monitoring that construction. And it might be nice to get that sort of a third-party view. What are the advantages and disadvantages in cast in place versus precast as far as the long-term costs? So that we would have that information. It told me just initially some of the studies they've done is that there's really not that much additional costs over the life to have the precast. You're gonna have to do the joints more often, but there's less costs in other areas. But I'm not the expert on that, and so I think it'd be good the next time he's up here, perhaps we can have a special meeting and meet with him and try to get some ideas on the pluses minuses of precast versus cast in place.
On the current ramp that's being developed on Block 9, that's precast, isn't that right?
Correct. Yep.
Right, and so you've got foundations done. What's progress on that ramp?
We're about, maybe about 40% total complete with the ramp.
How many?
As
40?
far as construction in place, we have, I think we're working on third and fourth floors on the south, kind of 1/3 of the ramp portion right now. But the goal would be is that full structure from start of precast to finish a precast is about a 3-month assembly process. But the full structure there, sometime early April, would be the goal that ramp is sitting.
And that's a smaller ramp, but the per stall space, is it similar to what Jim was just talking about? For what you're finding, what your bids were on your estimate?
Yeah, as far as a cost per, yep. Yeah, so that ramp is a little bit less efficient on the ground floor. It's a smaller footprint, but it's a taller ramp. So there's a couple things to consider there, but yeah.
I think the cost on that is somewhere right around 11 million also, but and I'm not sure that includes all the architecture fees, just the construction cost.
Anybody have any questions for Keith? Otherwise, you got everything else to add, Keith?
No.
All right, well, thanks for the nice presentation. Can you do this, maybe you did, but give us a link to this so we can share it with the other folks that are been part of the conversation?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
The question for the parking commission is, are we ready to make some recommendations to City Commission right now, or would you rather wait and maybe have a special meeting in a couple of weeks after we've had a chance to look at this? If we're going to keep with this schedule, I don't think we can wait until the end of March. But I think the next steps, if you're comfortable, one would be to ask the City Commission to authorize our city attorney to work on that development agreement, to put that together. Secondly, to put together a financing plan for you to consider. And of course, we can probably do that without a motion, but want to make sure you're comfortable with it. And the other is kind of give an indication that we're generally comfortable with that design. And I know you just saw that this morning, so it's probably a lot to ask for that part of it, but I think maybe a motion to put together a development agreement and a financing plan would be appropriate if you're comfortable with that. Again, I don't want to push you, but.
Commissioner Thorson.
Well, I think we've had a positive experience with the Kilbourne Group and the development of the Roco ramp, and I think I'd be open to making that motion. Well, to to begin the development agreement and the financing plan between the Kilbourne Group and the City of Fargo.
Second?
Any further discussion? Again, when we went to Lincoln and Sioux Falls and Winnipeg and Grand Forks, one of the things that we found was the developers agreement can often be the time that takes the most time. And in the Roberts ramp, since we did learn from, others, Jim and Kilbourne and our attorneys did a really good job. I think, what was it, 90 days? I mean, it was like a record. And again, I think it's an opportunity. Again, we have a baseline, but there's things we may want to add, and improve as we go along. So I think the sooner we get started on that type of an agreement, the better. So I would be in favor of the motion. So we'll call the roll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, no. We're going to start the developers agreement and start looking into the financing package. So anything else, Jim? Okay. So thanks, everybody. Next item is the parking timelines for downtown projects. Here comes Kevin Gorder.
Good morning. It's Kevin Gorder from engineering. I'm a new guy here with the City of Fargo, but Christy Smith is along with me today. She's our downtown liaison, and this is kind of a follow-up to item 7 from the agenda that you guys or the minutes you guys just approved as far as downtown, the parking and all the things that we're working on. So since about the first of the year, we've been developing agreements which each of the developers or people are remodeling, rehabilitating their buildings out in the public right away. So you're going to see dumpsters, you're going to see stuff like that out in the parking spots. So we're trying to minimize some of that stuff, possibly come up with a fee structure to use the parking spots for durations that are, as they're out there, just kind of things like that. So just kind of a general update. But as we are working on all these things and the concerns and calls come in, some of the concerns that we're getting include a lot of contractor permit parking out there, and there's a lot of spots that are being used up by a contractor, what they feel are like commuter type pickups and stuff like that. And I just wanted to bring that to the commission today, just to kind of let you know, I don't know who's issuing how that process goes, but along with dumpsters using up or cranes using up those parking spots, there's a lot of these contractors are parking as well. So that's just kind of a general update. I don't know if you guys have questions or if you want more details. A lot of the things we're working on are very much on draft stage. We're going to try to run it through here in the next month or so and possibly get up to commission as far as how far we want to go with implementation of our side of things, but just working towards kind of figuring out what's happening in all the spots in the downtown area.
So Kevin, have you, and Christy, have you been working through this for quite some time? And there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, things change so quickly.
Yeah.
That it almost needs a day-to-day type of response.
Yeah, and that's part of the challenge, of course, is the day-to-day response. But so what we're doing is we're working with the builders and the owners to come up with an agreement. What's your schedule? What's your timeline? When do you need to be on the right of way? When don't you need to be on the right of way? So that's the kind of we're requiring deposits if there's any damage in the right of way while they're using it, as this is evolving. And it seems like that process is starting to kind of take hold in some of this stuff. The dumpsters right now are a little different deal. Those are just a permit that you can get right at engineering. So there's not a whole lot of schedules or anything like that that's put together with that. But we're trying to refine that process a little bit as well, just to kind of get better control on them. You see some dumpsters that are out there for months and they're not really being used. So we're trying to zero in on some of that as well.
Right. Some of the things that have happened is, with so many simultaneous projects going on, the street closings can really and have caused some issues again. So that's why we're all here. Mark Williams from Planning is going to help. He's been on part of this work with, I know you're at the Downtown Community Partnership meetings and the Downtown Task Force meetings. So maybe you can give us an update on how that's going.
To help clarify, we still get concerns from adjacent property owners and business owners about construction vehicles being parked throughout the downtown area. And to divvy it up, there's service vehicle permits, which is managed by Interstate Parking, and then there's construction vehicle permits, which is managed by the engineering department. And the construction vehicle permits include, the dump trucks, the cranes, the dumpsters, and then the service vehicle permits include the plumbing trucks and those smaller vehicles. I think a lot of the complaints that come in are the contractor vehicles that are being parked all over. And we do have a pretty strict set of rules of what needs to be followed and how it should be followed. But we're continually being asked to maybe relook at how that is administered and what the rules are and what we should be doing. Engineering is in the process of looking at the encroachment permits when it comes to dumpsters and how they regulate where the dumpsters get placed and where they get, who gets them, how long they get to be put there. So it would be nice to maybe have more of an open conversation on, you know, is this a concern that we have? Is there something that we want to do to change and modify? You know, do we want to limit certain projects to a certain number of vehicles? Do we want to limit certain vehicles to only certain streets and avenues? That's kind of the impetus for this based on the calls that we've received.
Right. You were saying that there's some things in place. Are we following the current policies right now, or could we do a better job with that?
Yes, I believe we're, you know, to the most part, interstate parking is following them. The vehicles do need to be placarded. They technically do need to be owned by the contracting company with whoever the contractor is. Sometimes the question is it more convenient to be able to park in front of the job site versus parking off somewhere? I think that answers the question.
Well, right. So Vanessa, who enforces it? Is it police? Is it a combination? Is it interstate parking? So as far as once those permits are issued or those areas are assigned, who's monitoring to see whether they're in compliance?
I think I'll have Vanessa come up here and speak to that.
Have to go up there.
Yeah, maybe, Vanessa, you could address, what type of vehicles are eligible for a permit. For instance, if I just put a sign on my vehicle and I'm not really a contractor and the business doesn't own it, I'm not going to be able to get a permit. And then I can't park on Broadway either. So maybe you can address those two things.
So yes, they can't be on Broadway between the hours of 10 and 3:30. If they are on Broadway, they do have to follow that time zone. Patrollers do tag vehicles if they are there during those hours for a longer period. They are ticketed. If they do not have the logo on their vehicles, they are ticketed. So patrollers do watch those things.
So would you say our parking ambassadors, are they updated regularly and you feel there's good communication so they know where these places are supposed to be, or is it just placards that
Well,
basically?
now with the new passport system, it's all done by the license plate reader. They give us their license plate number and we're able to track it a little bit better. They can't duplicate the placard or anything like that. We have to have their license plate in the system. So
Right, so the license plate recognition's paying off in a lot of regards,
Exactly.
isn't it? Yep. And anybody else have anything?
Well, I know the snow probably makes it a little more difficult this time of year with the amount that we've had, and it takes up some of the parking as well. So that's, getting cars off the street at night and being able to clean that, I think is something that we should look at. But I also know contractors and construction people, and I know they want to park as close to that front door as they can possibly park. And it makes no difference sometimes to them whether they have a permit or not. So I think just, we just do our due diligence with ticketing and moving those cars out. I think that, we can get through at least this part of the winter and take a look at it in the spring.
Thanks, Vanessa. Anybody else have any questions regarding this subject or suggestions? Anything else from Kevin or Mark or Vanessa? Or Christie?
I believe when engineering has a little bit more refined proposal when it comes to the encroachments, we'll be bringing that forward.
Yeah, I guess just a quick update on some of that stuff. We're working on maybe limiting dumpster sizes. Some of these big dumpsters can take up a lot of spots, and we've done some drawings where we can get a smaller, say a 15 cubic yard dumpster in 2 spots without having to take up a bunch of spots. There's been some questions about visibility, maybe limiting how tall the dumpsters can be. things like that. And just trying to figure out how to kind of wiggle our way into this solution that's going to work for everybody, but still get progress and still get the buildings rehabilitated and all the things we have to try to balance. So we're looking into some of those things as we go forward. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we're hopeful to move forward here as quick as we can. But
It's fun to see all the progress, but there's some pain involved when
Yeah.
we get there.
You know,
And it's
like-
going to continue for quite some time. We're only about half done with what we can do.
Oh, that's an interesting comment because, you know, the size of those construction dumpsters, they'll run them parallel on those curbs versus, you know, cutting down the size of those, you can change. Because are they putting cones out in front and behind that so that they can get in there to get those dumpsters out as well?
Depends on the contract. A lot of them are trying to block off space, and of course you have the idea of pickup and delivery and all the things that you have to process. So we've got some drawings where we kind of angle them a little bit, so maybe they don't have to they don't take up so many spots to be able to do drop-offs, pickup and stuff like that. So just kind of looking to see what we can fit in. It's part of the struggle with the smaller dumpsters. There's really only one supplier in town that has them currently, so we got to kind of figure out what the supply is too before we start demanding them, because you may not be able to get them or get enough of them. Like on Broadway right now, we have 5 active projects plus Block 9, so there's just a lot of activity that's going on. Some of them are looking to wrap up here in the next month, but and the more is coming, so we see it coming, so we're trying to get our arms around it.
Thanks. Vanessa, you have anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to mention the fee for the service permit is only $25. You know, a ticket is $20 to $30, so maybe increasing that. And there is no cap. There is no limit to how many permits a business can have.
Right. So that's something that we should maybe investigate with, you know, what's a going rate in some other peer cities maybe, because that's not much of a deterrent.
Well, we can do that, but that also becomes part of the construction cost at that point. They'll just turn those things in. It won't deter anybody who wants to just park there, no matter what that price is, in my opinion.
So $25 even. It's
Well,
kind of like
for-
speeding tickets, isn't it, Randy?
I guess. I've never had one. Maybe one.
All right, anything else from anybody? Well, thanks, everybody, Mark and Vanessa and Kevin. Any other business that we want to discuss? Jim or Andy or Brian? If not, do we have a move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I
Thank you.